Well, we were having a little bit of a purge at work the other day, and yeah, I think one just accumulates papers and then doesn't always sort of sort them out timeously. So at the beginning of this year, we had a bit of time to do that, and I came across this diary, which, because of the year that 2020 was, is completely blank. So obviously, it was bought with the intention of being used during that year, and then we went into lockdown. One of the things that I have been wanting to do for myself is to have a record of garden journal, or make a garden journal, but a month by month one, according to what we're growing and producing here. I've always gardened in South Africa, and obviously being in the northern hemisphere now, the plants are by and large the same, but there are different ones. The growing seasons are different, and obviously the soil that we've got here is different. But the other part to my wanting to create this garden journal is that I love to paint in watercolors, and I like to draw, and I find that I'm not really setting aside enough time to actually do that. So I felt if I started a garden journal that would just be a month by month thing, that I might have the opportunity to be a little bit more disciplined in using my painting and my drawing, and yeah, just making a record of what I'm doing. So what I would like to do is to keep the journal fairly light, as in colors, not too many dark colors, except when we get to sort of like the autumn months. So at the moment we're in winter, so obviously the colors will be fairly light. My intention now is I'm going to just start by taking off things like this label, because that's a sticky label and I wouldn't want to have that as part of my journal. I'm going to then take a piece of sandpaper, and I'm going to very, very, very lightly just sort of buff the surface of this journal so that I can paint it. Probably might start off just by wiping this with a wet wipe, I think, just to get any sort of dirty marks, because I can see that there are a few here. I just would get those off first. Give it a light sand, because that always gives it what is known as tooth, just a little bit of a grip for the paint to bond properly. And I think because this journal has this sort of faux leather finish and it's slightly shiny, that the paint might not stick that well. So I have here a sanding block, and all I'm really lightly going to do is just to go round and round and round. I'm not going to do too much on camera because it actually makes a noise, but just go round and round and round very, very lightly, just to buff that surface. Then I'm going to have a look now at the inside pages, and already in the front and the back of this diary there's some pages here that I feel I might like to use for other projects. So all of these front ones where you've got the little calendars for the various years, you've got various information. Oh, let me just move my tea out of the way. Got lots of information about teas. I'm thinking about tea now. You've got lots of information about countries, measurement conversions, tire pressures, all these kind of interesting things. I think that these I would rather use for junk journals rather than this gardening journal. So I'm going to start by just taking these out, and I know that it might leave a little raggedy edge, but I will actually sort that out a little bit later. And then I'm going to lift up this section of the book, and I'm going to pull out those equivalent pages at the reverse side so that I don't have any odd pages in this book. I'm also, by doing this, trying to make the book a little bit less fat, so that as I add things in, I've got the space within the framework of the book to be able to accommodate that bulk, because otherwise, you know, your book gets so bulky and then eventually your spine starts to break. Right, so I'll come in here with a pair of tweezers and just pull out all these little raggedy bits of paper. Then I'm going to flip to the back side of the journal here, or the diary, and this back inside cover I'm going to keep. The next page has been glued to it slightly, so I'm just going to hold the edges of the pages and just give it a bit of a tug, just to pull the glue away. There we go, just so that I can loosen it. And this one has all these lovely little receipts and invoice kind of pages, and these would be fantastic to use in junk journals. Coffee stain them, tea stain them, do what you like. So I'm going to take these ones out, And exactly the same as I did previously, I'm going to just find the other side of this and start to pull them out there. You'll normally find that your pages will come away quite easily where the reverses. I might not have got the right one this time. It looks a little bit too fat. Let's just see. There's the middle. If you flipped up the back of this, you would normally be able to see where the pages join. Oh, there we go. Right, so we'll just take these ones out. Right, so this one's not coming out easily, and if I just had to lift the edge of this signature, you'll be able to see whether you've got all the pages out, because you should have a page that folds over here and there's no loose pages on the opposite side. Right, so for the middle of the book and all the other signatures that are there, you're wanting to take out a couple of pages just to reduce the bulk. And I've just put this bookmark in to find it. So these signatures have been stitched in, and I'm not too sure that you're easily going to be able to see this. I wonder if I just get a pencil here and just do this, you'll be able to see a little bit more easily where the stitches are. So wherever I've got a pencil mark, there is some stitching. And it is a lot easier if you take the pages out from the middle, because you can see first of all that this is one continuous page. You get a big nice spread if it tears evenly, and you will be able to do this with each signature. So I'm just going to take this out, and I'm just going to for now take 2 out of each signature, see what I'm left with for the bulk of the book. Okay, and then I'm going to move on to do the next signature. So let me carry on with this. Once I've taken 2 pages out of each signature, because if you have a look here on the spine, you can see that there's quite a lot of different signatures. I'm going to see how much space that gives me. If necessary, I'll take a 3rd page out. But let me get to that stage, and then I'll come back to you and show you what it looks like. So I've now taken out 2 pages from the center of each signature. I haven't tidied up the inside pages yet, but you can see that this has given me quite a bit more space than a compact journal. But I think I'm going to still go in and take out 1 more page from each signature. There are quite a lot of pages in each of these signatures, but you are starting to see them, if you look here, a little bit more clearly. My concern is that if I start adding things in, that this isn't really an expandable spine, so I want to have just a bit more space. So I'm going to take out 1 more page from each of these, and let's have a look and see what that looks like. If we have a look now at the actual number of pages and what the spine is looking like, you'll see that I've actually got flexibility. You'll see here that there's enough space that if I were to add anything with bulk into my pages, that I've now got the space to accommodate it. I don't know if my journal is slightly bulky and pushes out a little bit. When it starts being like that, it's quite difficult to paint on, and that's what I'm aware of at the moment. So the next step that I'm going to do now is just to take a pair of tweezers and start to pull out all these little sort of fluffy bits of paper that were caught up in the signatures as I tore the pages out, just to neaten it up. I know that in some cases the pages have torn a little bit as I pull pages out, but I'm not going to worry about that, because I actually am going to use some gel medium just to join 2 pages together, bond them together to make the pages slightly thicker, so that they will take the paint that I'm going to be using a little bit later on. So the next process now is I'm just going to go through my whole book, pull out all these little raggedy bits of paper that are stuck in there, just to tidy it up, and then I'll show you my next step. Step now is to start to paint the cover, because I'd like the cover to be white, and then I'll probably just use some of my distress spray stains to maybe create sort of a motley effect. I'm not too sure yet, but I do want to have a white background. So as I mentioned, I've lightly sanded this so that I have a little bit of tooth or a little bit of grit, so that the paper is not too smooth and the paint will peel off. I'm actually just going to use this delicate chalk paint that I got from Wilko. It's just a little tester pot, so you could find these anywhere where you want to go. You'll find these little tester pots. They're actually quite reasonable. They're normally about £1 or £1.50. The reason why I'm doing this is because probably I will paint white over this, and I'm going to use a white studio gouache by Pebeo. I find this is really nice, but black is quite a hard cover to cover, and I do find that this Wilco emulsion tester brand does actually cover very nicely. So let's get the lid off. I've put a piece of baking paper in between the front cover and the first page, so that if there's any paint that goes over, it's not going to stick to the page underneath. I've also wet my brush so that these bristles here don't get too dry, because if they're very dry, then your paint settles around this ferrule, which is the metal part, and it becomes quite difficult to clean. I've also only put paint on the last part of the brush, because that actually then means that I'm not overloading it. So I'm looking for a thin application of paint here at this stage, and I'm not too phased about whether it is all in the right direction or not. I'm really just wanting to cover the black, because I will be working on top of the cover to decorate it. I don't know how your week's been, but I must say this last Thursday, it was -6 when I went out to work, and I was working outside that day. Although when I say outside, I don't mean not undercover. We've got a polytunnel and we've got a container that we work in as well, but trying to open the container at about 10 in the morning when my group had arrived was quite a challenge, because we'd had a break, and we'd had to put new locks on because they'd ground the lock off the container, and the the new lock is really awkward to open, but our hands were so cold that we could only take our gloves off for a few minutes. Well, not, I say a few minutes, like 2 minutes, before we needed to put them back on again. So there were 4 of us trying in turns to open this new lock, where you've got to turn a key and turn another little bolt to come down. Anyway, we managed to do that, but the other part of the day was really funny, because we've got a large bed where we've been working, and traditionally they've always used that bed for potatoes or beans, you know, some of these crops that need more space, and we needed to just remove the membrane because that was covering, and the membrane is used to just stop weeds growing, simply because it had all blown off the one section, but also because we wanted to lay bark down, because we're going to put some smaller beds there with bark paths in between. And one of my trainees, who's non-verbal, bless her, she was laughing and laughing and laughing at me, because the bricks had frozen to the membrane, which was frozen to the soil. So it was quite a challenge to try and actually get these up. We did do it, and we got all the bark laid down, but it was actually very funny at the time. So I think I'm just going to put my little lid here, and I want to just paint the inside. Oopsie, you can't see. I just want to paint this little inside edge of the book, just so that I don't have a black line that doesn't sort of link with anything. I will be gluing the front page down to the cover of the book, so, or maybe not, maybe I'll just work on it, but I don't want this black here, so I'm just going to do that. Then I'm going to leave the front side to dry, and I will paint the back. So it is a little bit of a process where you need to do these things in steps, allowing each to dry, but it doesn't take very long for each, and these paints dry very, very quickly, which is a real godsend. Right, so we're nearly there. I find when I'm doing painting, and I know that I'm coming back in a short period of time, I actually just normally wrap my brush up in cling film and just undo it. Saves having to wash your brushes all the time. I haven't got cling film on my table right now, but I think I'll just wrap it up in some of this baking parchment, and then I'll come back in about 10 or 15 minutes when this is dried, because I've got other things to do right now, and do the back cover. So we just have to be patient and let these things dry. So I've managed to do the front cover. Oopsie, sorry, that was me hitting the brush against the light. Right, so we managed to do the front cover, The back cover won't take long. It's actually quite nice what's happening here. It's almost giving you like a little kind of crackly look where there's texture in the actual cardboard. I don't know if you can see those little veins and things. That's rather nice. I like that. Anyway, we'll let that dry, see if anything else transpires. Sometimes one thing has a reaction on the other, and if I'm doing a garden journal, very happy. So we'll see. Anyway, I'll see you in a minute. Yeah, so it's only taken about 10 minutes for this paint to dry on the front. So we'll quickly do the back. It's always so exciting when you're starting a new journal or a new project and you've got ideas in your head and you're figuring out how to translate them. And I just want to, at this point, give you some encouragement, because I taught craft for many... sorry, I've got a long brush. Sorry, that's just the light again. I taught crafts for many years, over 25 years, and quite often people's expectation was the result and not enjoying the process so much. And they came in very tense to begin with, not wanting to start the project because they had this fear of not translating what was in their head onto the page. And when you do creative stuff, you are often going to find that it's, first of all, just will relax you. It helps you de-stress. And I used to get quite a few people referred by cardiologists and things to come for lessons so that they could de-stress and have a hobby. But it also just helps you to play around with the mediums. And one of the examples I use is when you're learning to write at school, you sharpen your pencil a lot so it wears down. You make mistakes. You need an eraser sometimes to rub out. Sometimes you can't rub out the mistake. But you just press on, and eventually you'll get to where you want to be. And the same thing is with anything creativity. Sometimes you have happy mistakes where things don't turn out the way that you wanted them to, but the result is nevertheless pleasing. So don't be put off starting something just because you feel you won't get something that's perfect at the end of the day. Just start playing, even if it means that you start by working on loose pages that you can then put into your journal if you're happy with them. But just start, just have some fun, just enjoy what you've got, and make some magic happen in your life. You'll just find that the creative journey is just wonderful. Can you see what I'm doing here? Sorry, I'm just now going to paint just these little black edges on the inside of the journal. Oh, there we go, you can see them. Sorry, this book is quite long for my work table. And once I've covered all of this, we will start to glue a few pages together and gesso them. Have I not got the front page? Oh, well, it doesn't matter as long as there's a page, because that's going to have gesso or glue on it. Just make sure you do the edges here, light covering. There we go. Right, nearly done and ready for the next stage. So I'll just let this dry as well. Okay. I'm now going to start the process of gluing my pages together, and we could use a variety of different glues. We could use Elmer's glue or matte medium or gel medium. I'm going to try this Hobbycraft PVA. I've not worked with it before, and I just want to see whether it actually makes the pages warp at all. I'm not certain about that. As I say, I've not used it. So the next thing I want to do is to make sure that, because I've painted this white, that I've got the orientation of my book correctly. The worst thing I could do would be to actually start at the back of the book incorrectly. I have decided that I'm going to keep these inside cover pages as they are, because I like the markings on them, and I think I'll be able to use bits and pieces of that. This is quite a nice thick page, so I'm going to leave that on its own. And I'm going to now glue the next two pages together, because the diary pages are quite soft. So in order not to get into a real sticky mess with my pages, I'm actually going to put this piece of baking parchment underneath the page, that is the one that's going to be the bottom. So I've got this one that I'm going to glue on top, and the glue is going to go here. So I'm going to just spread, making sure that I get all the way to the corners. This is quite a nice thin mixture so far. We'll see how it performs as we go. Quite sticky as well, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's always funny when you try out glues. The glues in the UK are so different to the ones in South Africa, which tend to be a little bit more on the thick side, I must be honest, and a lot more white. These are almost like a corn-floury kind of pasty kind of consistency. Anyway, let's see how this works. They did have nice big bottles of this, and since I use a lot of glue, if it works well, I'll be happy. It's been a bit of a challenge moving continents, because you know, you leave everything behind and have to start building up your stash again, and then obviously getting used to different products. Anyway, so I think I've covered all the page. It is starting to buckle. Okay, well, that's what I was a bit afraid of. Anyway, let's see how we go. I'm going to start by gently taking my finger from the spine of the book and rubbing it down like that, so that I've actually got the pages covering. Whoops, see, we're going horribly wrong this side. Let's work it this way, and if I just move this over a little bit, you'll see a bit better. Right, so we'll have to just work the opposite direction. You could use a card if you have one at hand. I'm just going to use my fingers, making sure that I rub down in the corners. I'm keeping the page up so that I can rub as I go. The paper might still buckle, but that's simply because the glue is wet, and generally it will dry clearer. And if the first page isn't perfect, well, so be it. I'll change for the next pages to a different glue, I think, because this doesn't work for me, but it was good to test it out. Yeah, this is definitely not going to be my medium of choice going forward. I'll use it for other things. Right, so we're going to just let this glue down. Got a couple of wrinkles. We'll just regard them as texture for our page and carry on. It's a junk gel after all. Right, let's leave that to dry and see what the end result is like. And I think it's also a good thing that you see that sometimes pages don't always react the way that we think they will be. Be just a bit careful once you've got a wet page like this of fiddling too much with these wrinkles, because the danger is that you could start to pleat them. And so as I suspected, that page has now dried with a few little wrinkles, but bearing in mind that this is going to be a journal all about the garden, and you might be writing in the garden and get it wet, it's not inappropriate. It's just not what I wanted. So I'm going to move on to working with a different adhesive, just to show you the difference. So I've got this Montmartre gel matte medium. For most things it's not what I would choose, because it is actually quite thick and goopy, but it might work well for this. And the other one I've got is the Galleria matte medium. This is a much more liquid one, so I think I'm going to try this Montmartre one first, and we will see what happens. So let me just make sure that I've got the right page. Yeah. So the reason that I'm gluing two of these, yeah, you can, if you have a look here, it is really, really thick. I think I might actually just get a palette knife and spread it a bit with that. Yeah, I can do this more quickly. You could just use an old store card as well to do this, and you won't need a thick layer. This might work better. Well, we'll see. Sometimes it's just trial and error, because all papers are different, and the diary pages are generally quite thin compared to a normal journal page, which would be more paper quality. This is very, very thin, like Bible pages, also incredibly thin. And because this is not going to be easy to see where you've spread it, if you hold it up to the light once you think you're done, you'll be able to see if you've got any dry patches. I'm pushing away from the spine so that I don't crumple the pages, and if I'm doing this, I'm going to put my finger down. So this is really, really dry on here. Okay, we'll see. This might be the way to go. Do these little corners, make sure that they are well and truly secured. And as I mentioned, if you are wanting to test, if you hold these pages up to the light and you just wiggle them, you should see reflection, and the reflection will show you whether it's wet, which means that there's glue there, or whether it's dry. Oopsie. So just a couple of thick bits here. I'm going to smooth out, and now I'm going to take this dry page and work from the center. This is working much better. I can already see that it's not wrinkling so quickly as the other one. It's amazing just how a glue can make such a difference. I'm going to turn the page over this way just to smooth out this side, because this is the side where it had all the glue put on. I'll leave this to dry and then I'll come and show you. So as I suspected, that page has now dried with a few little wrinkles, but bearing in mind that this is going to be a journal all about the garden, and you might be writing in the garden and get it wet, it's not inappropriate. It's just not what I wanted. So I'm going to move on to working with a different adhesive, just to show you the difference. So I've got this Montmartre gel matte medium. For most things it's not what I would choose, because it is actually quite thick and goopy, but it might work well for this. And the other one I've got is the Galleria matte medium. This is a much more liquid one, so I think I'm going to try this Montmartre one first, and we will see what happens. So let me just make sure that I've got the right page. Yeah. So the reason that I'm gluing two of these, yeah, you can, if you have a look here, it is really, really thick. I think I might actually just get a palette knife and spread it a bit with that. Yeah, I can do this more quickly. You could just use an old store card as well to do this, and you won't need a thick layer. This might work better. Well, we'll see. Sometimes it's just trial and error, because all papers are different, and the diary pages are generally quite thin compared to a normal journal page, which would be more paper quality. This is very, very thin, like Bible pages, also incredibly thin. And because this is not going to be easy to see where you've spread it, if you hold it up to the light once you think you're done, you'll be able to see if you've got any dry patches. I'm pushing away from the spine so that I don't crumple the pages, and if I'm doing this, I'm going to put my finger down. So this is really, really dry on here. Okay, we'll see. This might be the way to go. Do these little corners, make sure that they are well and truly secured. And as I mentioned, if you are wanting to test, if you hold these pages up to the light and you just wiggle them, you should see reflection, and the reflection will show you whether it's wet, which means that there's glue there, or whether it's dry. Oopsie. So just a couple of thick bits here. I'm going to smooth out, and now I'm going to take this dry page and work from the center. This is working much better. I can already see that it's not wrinkling so quickly as the other one. It's amazing just how a glue can make such a difference. I'm going to turn the page over this way just to smooth out this side, because this is the side where it had all the glue put on. I'll leave this to dry and then I'll come and show you. So my pages have dried quite nicely, and I'm just going to use some gesso just to give them a ground on which I can actually work, because sometimes with these pages you can find that your inks or your paints will take differently. So let me get on and just put a bit of gesso on this. I don't mind if it's not 100% covered, but just as long as I've got a bit of a background of some sort. This gesso has titanium dioxide in, which is the white part of it. You can see sometimes you get a more translucent gesso, but for my purposes today I'm very happy with this. I'll put some on this page as well. Just because it also creates quite nice marks. And you'll see you don't have to be terribly fussy about the direction in which you put it. What you want to do is not have necessarily too many thick lumps unless you're planning to work with some kind of texture. Right, you'll see again I've got my bit of deli paper between pages, so I don't have any texture there. And I'm just going to smush this around a little bit. Rather a nice word that is, isn't it? Smush. Very descriptive. Right, so I'll move this across, and I'll just pick up my deli paper and move it this way while I'm doing my next layer. There we go. Move everything across, I think. There we go. So again, not covering the whole page, just giving myself a bit of a surface on which I can work with paints and inks. Anything that's extra on your spatula, you can just put on the side. And you can use your spatulas to create all sorts of textures. So you can create a lot of little parallel lines by using the side of it. You could create a whole lot of sort of very soft, fluffy textures. I'll lift this up in a second. If you wanted to just put your spatula down into the wet gesso, let me lift this up so you can see. I don't know if you can see that. Here, if I shine the light on it, how the textures work here. Could do some different patterns. You can do little curvy patterns. So use your palette knives to create any sort of thing on the groundwork that you would like to do. So this is now not my cover page and my first page. This is just the first page inside the journal that I'm working with. Maybe we'll just create some little squiggles here just for some fun. Right, leave that to dry. I'm undecided about whether I want to really put another layer of white on the front, and I'll show you why. Because this has got some quite nice little veiny textures. So until I've made a decision, I'm just going to leave that. So let's leave this to dry, and then I'll come back with my decision, major decision. So I'm going to stick with my original plan, and I'm going to just use some of this Pebeo Studio gouache. Gouache is just opaque watercolor, and this particular range is a little bit more acrylic-y than watercolory, if you know what I mean. But anyway, gouache is opaque as opposed to some of the other paints which are translucent. And I'm just going to give this a very light brushing across the top, just to cover up a little bit more of the black. Oh, I've picked a corker of a brush. I've got so many brushes. Why did I do that? There we go. So I'm just going to continue painting until this is done, let it dry, and then we'll see what the next step will be. Okay, so that's the painting finished now. So my journal is ready now. I've got the cover painted lightly with white to cover up the black on the outside. I have glued a couple of pages together and done some gesso on them. And now all that needs to remain is for me to start my garden journal. So please look out for the first month's work that I'm going to be doing in here. And I look forward to doing this throughout the course of this year. Bye for now.